This week, we're going to explore the house of the heart. You know, how the heart sits within the body. And it's really, our bodies are 65% water. But why doesn't the water just pool down around our feet? Well, it sits within all these little pockets that are created by fascia, from cells and clumps of cells through to muscles and through to the various structures of our body. It's something that, connects, it's connective tissue. It connects everything together. We don't normally focus that much on fascia within the Feldenkrais method, and so I'm really indebted to Thomas Myers and Gil Headley for the work they've done. And actually, Robert Schleep came and visited the last segment of my training in Sydney in 1990. But their websites are a fantastic resource, particularly Gil Headley, who you can do his courses for free as well. And they're very protective of their imagery, so I'm not going to use it, and with good reason too. But it's the most amazing system. We have three main layers of fascia. There's the superficial layer, which sits, everything is connected. There are three main layers, but everything, has blood vessels and nerves sliding through it, and everything is connected. And just beneath the skin, you have the superficial layer. It's quite thick in places, and it's globular, and it's loose. It's our fleshiness. It's our softness. You can put your hand on your belly and you can slide it around, and you can put your hands on either side of your rib cage, for instance, and pull and push. Pull with one hand and push with the other, and you can feel how you can slide the entire envelope of fascia around your body. It's where, our male and female shapes really are, defined by that. And it's filled with, it creates all these building blocks for the maintenance of our bodies, and it stores energy, and it's incredible stuff. Then you have the deep layer of fascia. Has a different structure. Fascia, it's all made of collagen in a different way, and it depends how the fibers run, and how as to how dense it is. And so in the deep layer of fascia, it's fibrous, all these strings running through it, and it can be laid in different ways. So it's not as slippy and slidey, the deeper fascia, because it connects to bone. It's anchored in two places often, and it gets distended and moves through the structures that are inside it. And between those two, you have this other layer of this loose, filmy, membranous fascia, or perifascia, as Gil Headley calls it. And within these layers, and you have layers and layers of it, it has this gel in it that enables things to slip and slide over each other, and these layers contain blood vessels and nerves, and so that when we're moving, we're doing these large movements where everything gets stretched, everything slides, and slips around so that you don't burst a blood vessel or snap a nerve. It's the most amazing system. In fact, I'll share my screen now, and we'll look at a few pictures. So the heart, that sits here in the rib cage, and it sits within a place called the mediastinum, or mediastinum. And that's divided into three. It sits on top of the diaphragm, and then it sits in the central place of the mediastinum, and it's wrapped in its own layers of connective tissue called the pericardium. And whoops, no, why is it, there we are, the pericardium, and it has 3 layers, and the outer layer is the same as the mediastinum. So it's connected, but one layer is it keeps it solid and stops it expanding too much, and the other layers in here are fluidy and enables everything to move. Let me just look here. I've got this organized. Oh yeah. This is the pericardium here. You see it's attached to the diaphragm. So as the diaphragm moves, it's also moving the heart. And the heart sits in the front, as you can see here. The lungs are also in the back here. So when you breathe in, the lungs expand. It also is moving the heart. And the heart itself sits against the lungs. And remember, the lungs are tubes, in this whole system through the body. We have tubes going everywhere, a lot of it going through these perifascial layers. The little filmy bits on a chicken, a bit of raw chicken if you get it, and you pull it back. They're full of blood vessels, and well, the whole fascial system is richly vascularized and full of nerves. And it sits within the entire system, the heart. Everything is sliding in here. Here's the liver here. When we breathe in, the diaphragm descends, the heart moves down. The liver also moves. It has this trajectory where it pushes down. This forward edge slides forward and down. And as you breathe out, it comes back again. And all the organs are slipping and sliding within the body. And sometimes, and actually let's look at we look at the cavity in here. Is the diaphragm up here and down inside the pelvic floor, all filled with these moving parts. And all of these muscles that you can see, they're all wrapped in fascia as well. So that when you rotate your leg or, rotate your forearm, say if you hold your forearm, you look at all these different muscles here with their little tendons, and hold your forearm with your hand and just rotate. And feel the way those muscles slide over each other. Or actually just feel, as you're rotating, how the muscles are sliding under your fingers. You can feel the different bumps there. And if you find the belly of one muscle and you follow it, so as you rotate your wrist, follow that muscle along. Well, you're rotating around here, and this side down here is staying fixed. So as you're, maybe holding this muscle here and sliding it, it is sliding over all the muscles underneath. So this whole system, this whole amazing system, is designed so that we maintain our integrity. And actually, now this is often when we get, before I get to that, this is a cat's heart, I think. Being inflated. But you see it's so wet. Now, the lungs are attached to the pleura around the ribs, so it doesn't collapse like, well, if it does collapse like that, it's you're in trouble. But notice how it's all wet. You know, in these lobes, because we have 3 lobes on the right and 2 on the left, you know, they slide over each other. Everything slips and slides over itself. And remember, the lungs are just a series of tubes, finer and finer tubes, until eventually they get so small, 3/1000ths of a millimeter thick, just big enough for one red blood cell to squeeze through, where oxygen and carbon dioxide can exchange. And it's interesting, if we look, this is a picture of some of that filmy fascia. And you can see the blood vessels inside there. And you can see the layers, you know, these little bits. There is often, you know, 3 or 4 layers in this thing that looks like one thing at first. And if you look at Gil Hedley's dissections, you can see where, you know, it looks like one layer and he starts peeling it back and it turns out there's 4 of them. This is after abdominal surgery. And, you know, often after we have abdominal surgery, you get these things called adhesions. And this is one of those. And that's where, you know, the fascial system is protective. It's growing, it's living, it's responding to what's going on in the body. So, you know, even if people have a pacemaker put in, or if they get breast implants or something implanted in their body, the fascial system grows a little capsule around it. You know, it comes in and assesses at first, is this part of my body? No, it's not. Can I eat it? No. What can I do? All right, I'll just wrap it up and just leave it isolated and separated. And often it responds, you know, if you have an incision, everything inside the body, you know, you have a scar, well, that scar is part of the healing, and that continues down inside the body as well. You know, underneath the skin where the scar is, you'll see the fascia is also held in this way, and there's often more of these adhesions which are protective. And of course, sometimes they can be problematic. You know, if you have a liver and you have one adhesion here where it's joining onto the rib, well, that's going to influence the trajectory of the way the liver moves when you breathe. And if you have a whole lot of them through here, you know, that's going to limit the way the diaphragm moves, the liver moves when you breathe. Or often in the gut through you'll get adhesions in the gut here, and it stops the free flow of movement. And you can't really break these adhesions up because they just grow again. They need to be, you can undo them through, it needs to be a much more gentle process. But it's this living system that slides through, and it's these layers here that I find so miraculous. When you dry them out, or if you pull them apart, they look like fairy floss or cotton candy, I think you call it in the US. And it's all wet. So the heart, you know, you consider the space of the heart. It's functioning, it's beating, it's the very essence of our lives. And how does it sit within there? Well, if we look at this is one of Thomas Meyer's diagrams of, he divides the body up into these 12 channels that, or lines of force, that can be dissected. And this he calls the deep front line. And there's, superficial lines and back lines and side lines and arm lines. In a way, they sort of correspond to the acupuncture meridians, but the main ones, but although that wasn't his benchmark, he said. But, this is the deepest layer of tissue. This is the back of the body, so it makes the front of the back. And it comes right down from the soles of the feet. up through the legs, through the inner thighs, up over the front of the pelvis. It defines the pelvic floor, and that includes the diaphragm and the mediastinum here and the pericardium, and comes right up and encloses the tongue and the throat, the larynx, and right up to the top of the viscera here. And we'll explore the tongue in 2 weeks' time. But the thing with this, the deep front line, is that it's three-dimensional. And that's important in terms of the heart. No, I shall go here. And if we look at this plan of it, you can see, the heart sitting here, in the middle here. And the question I have for you, how much space do we need within our body to function well, for the heart and lungs to be able to function easily? So what we're really sensing here is the visceral cavity, which comes right through here. That's what we're going to be working with, sensing today. And it sits within the musculo-skeletal system. And it's interesting, you can look at it from the front to the back all the way through, and at the pelvis, at the top of the pelvis, at the the back, well, that's the top of the legs. Yet down here at the front of the pelvis here, that's the bottom of the viscera. And at the top, it's the back of the head here, it's the top of the musculo-skeletal system here, and at the front it's the top of the viscera. So the musculo-skeletal system, it surrounds the viscera. And it's this round space. And this is pretty amazing. As I said, you can dissect it out. So this is one of the legs. This is the foot, the muscle of the coming up here in the lower leg and the knee and in the thigh. And then the iliacus and psoas coming up inside the front of the belly, right through to the diaphragm. And then the mediastinum here, which contains the pericardium as well, and right up here around the throat to the tongue, and the tongue is the top. And that makes sense. At the tongue is a sensory organ of the gut, as is the nose. But, the nose is part of this other part that surrounds, through the skull. But everything is connected. And the heart, look where it is. And it's moving because it's on top of the diaphragm here. What happens if we scrunch ourselves up, if we're forever really compressed and tight and anxious and squashed down, hunched in front of a computer, or whatever we're doing? How does that influence the flow of blood and nutrients and life through our body? We look at this bear rubbing its back on the tree, and look at the volume of its viscera and the space that everything has. Interesting how lightly it's holding that branch, and the way it's transferring its weight from side to side. And the evenness of tone through here. What you may find with what we're doing today is that there are some parts of the belly that are much easier to access than others. And so what I'd like to do is today for you to be able to experience the whole tube and to be able to feel the lower belly. To function well. Like this French ballerina. This sense of this is our axis through the whole head, neck and torso here, the spine and the pelvis, but it's also it's the organs, it's the systems within the torso. And the evenness throughout here, determines how effectively we'll be able to function, how easily we'll be able to use our senses and access our world. So spreading our attention through the whole body. and maintaining this softness through here. And of course, the other thing is, in order to do something like this, it takes a tremendous amount of power in the belly and the pelvis. And, you know, if we only feel the upper part of our belly, and that's so easy to do if, you know, you're spending a lot of time sitting, you can't really function as well as if you can feel the whole of the belly. So we're going to explore this sense of the space in there, you know, three-dimensionally, right around the body. And, you know, to feel, you know, how can the heart function well? So we're going to explore heart's moving castle. So could you come up to stand just briefly? Yay. So stand here. Notice your length. From the crown of your head right down to your feet. And your depth from front to back. You know, from the crown of the head through your rib cage, pelvis, and your feet. And feel the way everything is moving as you're breathing. And of course, it's much easier if your knees are unlocked. And maybe place your hands on the back of the pelvis, in the heels of the hands at the top of the back of the pelvis, fingers spread out over each buttock. So at the back of the pelvis, that's the top of your legs. Front of the pelvis, it's the bottom of your viscera. You could just move your hands gently and feel how you can move the top layer, skin and connective tissue, the superficial fascia. You could even pull it from side to side, and maybe you could even feel it in front of your pelvis. Because it's a ring right around our body. You know, maybe you're more aware of your breathing down there now. And you may find as you relax your shoulders here, it becomes easy to sense, or easier to sense your breathing. Maybe even the beating of your heart. So the front of the pelvis, the pubic bone, is the bottom of the viscera in the front. And at the head, just below your eyes, or from your eyes and the top of the nose, is the top of the visceral space. At the back of the head, you have the skeleton. So let your hands down. And consider the musculo-skeletal system and the viscera. So maybe place your hands on your belly. Sense the movement as you breathe. And sense of all the organs. Through your belly, through the ribs, heart and lungs. Into your throat. In the mouth. And nose and eyes and ears. Space within you. And now move the superficial fascia on your belly, your skin and the superficial fascia. So you pull on the skin in one direction, then the other. Side to side, gently. And feel how it gathers in the superficial fascia and then the layers beneath it. And all the while, everything within your viscera is moving. Particularly your heart and lungs. Now leave your hands there and turn your head and your rib cage side to side, and you can sense something different. If you press your fingertips into the belly, you can sense the muscle beneath that turning underneath the superficial fascia. And now leave that and try this. So notice your breathing. Could you now extend your exhalation? So you breathe out and keep on breathing, as if you're shrink wrapping yourself. Keep on breathing out. So you draw the whole front of your body toward the back. And then when you need to breathe in, just let it go. Keep doing that in your own time. Breathing out, and you just keep breathing out and drawing the front toward the back, drawing everything in. And notice, is it even? Or does one side feel shorter or different dimension? Do you feel one leg begin to tighten as you're doing that? Or one side shortening? We'll leave that now. We'll come back to that. Come back down onto the floor, and could you sit on the floor in a comfortable position? And if there's no comfortable position on the floor, you could sit on a chair. Or use a wall for support, or actually that would probably be better than a chair if you can, but wherever's easy for you. And now sense the visceral space moving as you're breathing. How it's influenced by having your legs organized in this way. And once again, could you extend your exhalation? Keep breathing out, so you're squashing, you're pulling the belly and the whole front of your body toward the back. Noticing whether it's easy to maintain your length, or whether you pull down to one side, or whether there are some parts that are not so easy to sense. If it's difficult to feel the lower belly, don't worry if you can't. Don't use force, because we're going to try different ways to get a sense of the whole system. In fact, leave that now. Just notice how it feels. And consider the front to back of your head, crown of your head, and front to back of your pelvis, and the front to back of the upper jaw. From the upper jaw right out to the cheekbones, to the ears, through to the back of your throat, where the soft palate is. And now as you breathe out, could you lift your pelvic floor and the soft palate? And as you breathe in, allow them to relax back. And allow your attention to wander down through the space of the visceral cavity as you do this. Through the throat and the rib cage. And then leave that. And could you hold one wrist and find the pulse on the thumb side? And generally, if you have trouble finding the pulse, if you bend your hand in a little bit, if the hand is folded in rather than extended out, it's a little bit easier. Don't worry if you can't find the pulse there. You could find it wherever you can. And if you can't find the pulse, just listen for the sense of it within the rib cage, the heart beating. So listen to that pulse. Sense of the heart sitting in the middle of the rib cage, between the soft palate and the pelvic floor. Sitting on the diaphragm. Moving and being moved by your breath. And now, could you hold your breath now on an inhalation, but just stop breathing at some point, and then push your belly out, and then lift your diaphragm up so your chest expands and balloons, and then push the diaphragm down. Manipulate the space inside your torso. Move this bag of air around within the body. Feeling your heart beating as you do it. And you breathe when you need to, of course, and let your breath come back to a peaceful state, and then hold your breath again, and and then continue. And feeling it all the way down. And are there differences on each side? Or are you shortening yourself? Or tightening one arm or leg? Just examine what you're doing and reduce the amount of effort you need to make it as easy as possible, but to really try to get a sense of the entire visceral space. And then finish the one you're on. And then once again, breathe out slowly and draw, like you're shrink wrapping yourself, like one of those storage bags that uses a vacuum cleaner to suck out all the air from the bag. Maintaining your length, breathe out completely, hold your breath, and once again, do that diaphragm movement with your belly and the whole front of the body pulled in. And keep doing that in your own time. When you need to breathe, and it won't be as long if you're moving your diaphragm like this with on an exhalation, and then wait till your breath comes back to normal, then breathe out, draw everything in, and then do the same thing. And feel how it is different. What it enables you to feel. Finish the one you're on and just lie down on your back and rest for a minute. The sense of your length from your head down to your feet. And within that length, the visceral system. From the small bones in the face, in the back of the nose and the eyes, the airway, and right down into the pelvis. And in this orientation, exhale and shrink wrap yourself here and feel how it is when you're lying down. Try it a few times and, notice how much you can relax in your arms and legs, how much you can allow your musculo-skeletal system to maintain its length and width. And of course, it's quite different in the belly, where it's soft structures, compared to in the rib cage, where you have, the ribs and the diaphragm, and then above that, the throat. But sense right through as you're drawing the front of the body back toward the back. And that even though you compress yourself this way, there's still the sense of the heart beating. Well, hold your breath here and move the diaphragm down there, not then down here. Feeling the heartbeat as you do this. And if you can't feel the heartbeat in your chest, hold on to a pulse. So you can sense the entire volume of your viscera, from the front of your body right through to the back, the front of the back. And leave that and rest. And now find a pulse again, or listen to the heartbeat, and then shrink wrap yourself. Breathe out and draw the front and sides toward the back. And hold the breath there, and now move the diaphragm down, then up, then down. And does this make it easier to sense the lower belly? And the next time you do it, really see how much of the rest of your body you can soften and still have this sense of pulling the front back toward the back and moving the diaphragm up and down to manipulate the space within your viscera. And then rest there. It's within the viscera that we digest our experience of life. Well, roll over onto your side once again. But this time, could you splay your legs to the left? So turn your legs to the left. Your feet pointing to the left, your knees are pointing to the right. Have your right hand on the ground. Yeah. Sense your breathing here. And feel the organization in your pelvis. This might be comfortable, it may be not. Make yourself comfortable. If you have your hand further away, it'd be maybe freer in your hips. But notice how this influences the sense of the belly and the space within the viscera. And could you turn to the right and back to the center? And maybe place your left hand on the belly. And feel as you do this how all the tissue underneath is moving, sliding over itself. There's 4 layers of muscle in the belly. Under the heel of your hand, down the center, the fibers go straight up and down. And then there's a layer that goes in a diagonal in each direction, 2 other layers, and then underneath that there's a layer that goes side to side. And it joins into the ribs. Maybe hold the ribs. 4 layers of muscles between the ribs. And even round on the shoulders and in your neck. Feel the way everything slides as you turn. And right up to your eyes and your mouth and nose. Think of this visceral space from the face down into your pelvis. And then stay in this position around to the right, a comfortable distance. Maybe look from side to side with your closed eyes. You could even move your tongue side to side. And feel how everything is connected tongue to the throat and down to the airway, and then around the heart and the diaphragm. And then stay in this position, a comfortable position here, and pull the front of your body in, pull the belly in. Whole front of the body, shrink wrap yourself as you breathe out. And then let it relax as you breathe in. And of course, you do it with your breath. So, if you're breathing out slowly and steadfastly, allow the breath to fall in easily too. So that you could sense how the whole tube moves. From right down in your pelvis, right up to the nose and eyes. And then keep your belly pulled in, and now lift the pelvic floor and the soft palate. And then just come back to the middle, still in the same position, sensing how that is. And then go around to the right again, comfortable distance. Notice if it's a different place you're in now. Once again, pull the belly in toward the back, shrink wrap yourself. And this time, could you manipulate the diaphragm to push the pressure down into the pelvis and up into the head? Do it a few times here. And come back to the middle. And in fact, lie down on your back and rest. What influence has that had, that twisting, on the way you feel lying here? Well, could you reach over with your left arm toward the right? Reach over with the left arm toward the right. So your legs are still spread, but you could roll right over onto the right side. Keep your legs in the same position so your left leg is behind you and the left arm is in front, reaching up. As if you're in some sort of heavenly relay and you're floating on a cloud very quickly and reaching out for the baton. And in fact, could you stay there this time? Over onto your right side, left leg behind you, right, and left arm in front. And just sense how you move here. The organization through your musculo-skeletal system in the legs and arms, and the organization through your viscera. Tune in and feel the way your heart is beating here and the way you're moving as you're breathing. And then in this position, draw the front in toward the back as you breathe out. Shrink wrap yourself. And then let it unfold. Do this a few times and feel, what parts of yourself do you feel differently? What's the feeling through your belly, through the lower belly in particular? And stay with your belly drawn in, shrink wrapped. And now in this position, contract the pelvic floor and the soft palate. Sensing the space right through you. You could have a couple of goes at that. Softening in the arms and legs and neck. And the next time you shrink wrap yourself, could you this time move the diaphragm down, then up, then down? In your own time. And then leave that for a moment. Stay in this position. Just notice the rhythm of your breath. And as you breathe out, could you begin to very delicately point your feet as you breathe, and then as you breathe in, you let them come back to rest. As you breathe out, you point your feet. As you breathe in, you let them come back to rest. So, your feet have this arch in it, like the diaphragm. So as you're breathing out, your diaphragm is lifting. And your feet are pointing down as if you're leaping into the air. And when we do leap into the air, we leap in, often with an out breath. Could you also lift the palms of the hands in the direction of the head so that they're following the movement of your diaphragm? So as you breathe out, your diaphragm lifts and your hands lift in the direction of your head and your feet point down as if you're lifting yourself into the air. Well, leave that, come back down onto your back and rest for a moment. Just to consider that. So, as you breathe out, the diaphragm lifts toward the head and your feet extend and you lift your palms a little bit, mirroring the movement of your diaphragm. It's only a small movement. Once again, roll over onto that right side in that same position. Left leg behind you, left arm in front. And shrink wrap yourself, draw the belly in toward the front, through the whole front toward the back. And in this position now move the diaphragm up and down. And as the diaphragm moves up, push the legs away and lift the hands. As the diaphragm goes down, the feet come back and the hands go down. And this is as if you're lifting yourself off the ground. In fact, try it without being shrink wrapped. So just use a full breath so you can do it for longer. And imagine that as you do this, as you lift the diaphragm, you're actually lifting yourself off the floor. And as the diaphragm comes back down, feet and hands come back to their resting place. And it's as if you settle on the floor gently. Do it in your own time. Maybe it's as if you're some strange creature from another planet who, can travel like this, can leap, take enormous bounds and land ever so gently, and then leap off again, powered by its breath and heart. And there's the part when you leap where your diaphragm lifts up, and there's the part where you land gently, where your diaphragm pushes right down into the pelvis, into the lower belly. And then leave that, roll onto your back. What do you feel to each side now? And now roll over onto your side and come up to sit again. With your legs splayed to the left. Your feet are pointing to the left, your knees are pointing to the right, you have your right hand on the floor. Rotate yourself around to the right again, a comfortable distance. And do that same process. So hold your breath and move your diaphragm down and up and down. And as you do this, when your diaphragm lifts up, you lift your hand and you point your feet. And as your diaphragm presses down, the feet come back to neutral and your hand comes down. This is a 19th century version of it. It's, a lady riding side saddle, bounding through the cosmos. And you've got to see where you're going. Your eyes may be closed, but you can see with that inner sight. Sense the whole space of the visual space and the space inside your body as you do this in your own time. Leaping and landing with the utmost delicacy. And you could try it shrink wrapping yourself. Draw the, I think from the 19th century theme, draw the belly in and the whole, compress the whole thing and do the same thing, moving the diaphragm up and down. And as the diaphragm lifts up, you point your feet and lift your hand. Flying through space. And then leave that one. And could you flip your legs in the other direction? That could be quite different. Just notice, you could try it a few times if you like, just to feel what is the difference. In my hips it's certainly quite different. Make yourself comfortable here. And once you're here, sense from your eyes and nose the full visceral space and rotate around to the left. Stay there. And now contract the pelvic floor and your soft palate. Notice how it is on this side. And then try the same thing, shrink wrapping yourself, breathing out and drawing everything in. And sensing the whole space via the movement of the pelvic floor and the soft palate. And then try shrink wrapping yourself and, or first of all, no, without shrink wrapping yourself. This time try holding your breath with a full breath and moving the diaphragm up and down as you move your feet and your hand. So galloping through space. Landing when the diaphragm goes down, lifting off with your hand as the diaphragm lifts. keeping your senses and the space inside you open. And you could try a shrink-wrapped version here. Draw the belly and everything in. Lovely. Then leave that when you finish this one and lie down on your back and rest. Consider the space within you. The space of your senses. All the sensory information that you gather, processed within us. And now could you reach with your right hand over to the left? A few times roll onto your left side and come back. So you end up in this position where your right leg is behind you and the right arm is in front. Left arm is at shoulder height. You know, it's as if it's some sort of relay race and you're reaching out. Could be an Olympian one. You know, might be a painting of goddesses chasing after golden apples through the air. And then stay over onto this left side. Your right arm in front of you, the right leg behind. So you have this slight twist in the body and just feel the space within you, space within the visceral cavity. And different organization of your arms and legs and head and neck. And in this position, shrink wrap yourself. Draw the front all the way back to the back as you breathe out, right around the sides. As you breathe in, let it relax. And just notice how soft you can maintain, or how softly you can do this, how much length and width you can maintain as you do this. And the feeling right through to the bottom of the belly. And in this position here, stay with your everything drawn in toward the back, and then lift the pelvic floor and soft palate. And of course, you're holding your breath. Maybe that makes it easier to sense your heart. And then try, next time you do it, hold your breath and move the diaphragm down, then up, then down. And when you lift the diaphragm up, you extend the feet away and lift the palms. And when the diaphragm pushes down into the pelvis, the feet lift back to neutral and the hands come down. As if you're leaping through space using this method. And do it in your own time. Spreading the effort so that you could feel it right down into the bottom of the pelvis. You could still sense the heartbeat. Pushing the diaphragm all the way down into the pelvis, so you feel right around the pelvis and right across the lower belly when you're landing. And then when you lift the diaphragm, the feet extend, the hand lift, the whole body lifts into space. You fly along. Land softly. Your senses open. And you could try it with a shrink-wrapped version, breathing out and pulling everything in, and then moving the diaphragm down, then up, then down, just to get a sense of different parts of the torso. Can you squeeze yourself in a relaxed way, as if you were leaping and flying through some sort of a crevice, and then out the other side to land. And then finish the one you're on and just lie on your back there and rest. sense of space within you. The width of the sensory fields. And the depth and width and height of the whole visceral cavity where you process all that information. And then when you're ready, roll over onto your side and come up to stand. And notice what feels different. Width of the sensory fields and the space within the viscera now. And maybe just to compare, as you breathe out, shrink wrap yourself again and see, is that a different experience now? And then as you walk, notice how you can still sense the beating of the heart, and the way you process your experience of life through the whole visceral space.